Gone is the graceful expressions of passion. Gone is the graceful expressions of passion. But there are worlds.
He's like, he dances good, and when he was a little boy, he was singing so cool.
I grew up with his music, and I think he's extremely talented.
This kid does a little bit of everything. He's just so different, so unique in his style.
His thing is music, okay? He's just himself, you know?
People would die for him. Like, you see all those pictures of people all crying and trampling over each other just to get a glimpse of him.
I think he's the ultimate live performer.
I don't know how anybody can dance like that.
He's a great singer. I love him.
He's a genius.
He's the king of pop.
The man is just tremendous. And I'm in my 70s and I love him. So you can imagine what my teenagers do.
He's always been the greatest in my book.
I think he's, a gift to people who love music.
I just wish that he would just kind of take down his walls and just kind of show the world who he really is.
My son is very generous, very giving, very loving. When Michael and I used to sit down and watch television, and we used to see the children in Africa, flies around their mouth. You remember that? They were just dying. And he'd sit there with tears streaming down his face. And I would too, both of us sitting there crying like two fools. And he said, Mother, one day I'm going to do something about that. And he said, I know I can't heal the world, but I can help. And he always stuck to that. And he has given millions of dollars to support children. My son would never hurt a child. He loved children too much.
Michael, while we were working on some music one day, he said to me, he says, Bearden, you know what our name means? He says, well, our name means one who's most like God. And I said, kind of set up like this, like, ooh, yeah. He said, no. You gotta be humble. And I could see he was getting serious, so I said, well, I'm humble, MJ. Why are you so serious about this? And he said, well, I don't want God to take our gifts away. So if we're not humble, he'll take our gifts away. I said, well, that's I don't think that's going to happen. I said, no, I think your gifts are a little greater than mine. He said, then he really got mad at me. He said, no, don't say that. And he was really serious. I said, well, why, MJ? Why are you saying that? He says, because you're here with me, and I'm here with you, and we have to use our gifts together to help others figure out what their gifts are. I just shut up. Because he had the humanity, and he actually cared about it. Actually cared about people. Color, never really cared about that, but he never forgot where it came from either.
I was with Michael in Eastern Europe, and we got off of a plane, and he said, you want to go to the hotel, or you want to come to the orphanage with me? And it was like, rather than going to the hotel, he went to the orphanage. And he walked into this orphanage, and I remembered him looking, and he was walking through it. He was very calm. The promoters were there, and he was looking around, and the conditions were pretty grim. And I saw him whisper to someone, and then whisper to someone else, and he was, moving through and interacting with the children. And then later I found out what he had whispered, and it was, this orphanage will be turned around. There will be new beds in here. There will be clean sheets in here. There will be more people in here taking care of these children by tomorrow, or I'm not going to go on stage. I saw this guy go into an orphanage in Romania and turn the conditions around within 24 hours. Another thing that I'll always remember. This guy had the biggest heart of anybody, and really, really did care about improving, the human condition, especially for children.
His hugs were the deepest and the most sincere, heartfelt hugs. no matter how hard sometimes the world came down on him, he only reacted back with more love. Often, when we were working together, or in a meeting, we would be in a meeting, and if things got a little tense or there was a little anxiety, or, you know, he would just say, do it with love, you know, L-O-V-E, love.
With love, L-O-V-E.
With the love, L-O-V-E. It's all for love.
He's coming in.
We'll get there.
Michael was just the loveliest soul. And I always left having had an experience with Michael where I felt that I came out the other side looking at the world differently, looking at myself differently.
I would feel a little bit too.
I have a picture here that my 8-year-old daughter drew in remembrance of Michael. And that goes to show you what such a great guy Michael is, because he's still getting to young kids, and that's saying something.
We're gonna get you some soon.
We first moved to LA, and my son, you know, was like in pre-kindergarten, you know, and he was, you know, struggling a little bit, wasn't real happy. It came time for show and tell, and I said, gee, Dominic, what are you going to do for show and tell? He said, well, I want to bring Muscles. Muscles was Michael's boa. I said, better think of something else. I'm scared to death of snakes, so I'm not bringing it. So I mentioned it to Michael, and he said, oh, yeah, you can take the snake. Go ahead. I said, Michael, you know I'm afraid of snakes. I'm not touching that snake. He said, well, I'll go. You'll go. I said, you can't go to show and tell. No, I will. We go to the school, the whole place all fell out. My son was like the hero forever. I couldn't believe anybody would do something like that. I mean, that, to me, that's amazing. That's going above and beyond a client or a friend. Or I mean, that's the kind of guy he was. You know, he was a real guy.
Most misunderstood about Michael Jackson, Liz?
All the things you mentioned. He is the least weird man I've ever known.
Mm-hmm.
He is highly intelligent, shrewd, intuitive, understanding, sympathetic, generous, to almost a fault of himself.
Uh-huh.
And he just, if he has any eccentricities, it's that he is like larger than life, and some people just can't accept that or face it or understand it. His talent on stage, why I called him the king of pop, rock, soul, music, entertainment, whatever.
Yes.
There's nobody that can come near him.
Yeah.
Nobody can dance like that, write the lyrics like that, the music, cause the kind of excitement that he does.
And why do you think you all are such friends? What has brought this kind of bond? Because people tried to make this be weird.
Well, it's not. I mean, our childhoods are very similar.
Mm-hmm.
And we have that from the very beginning in common. I was a child star at 9, had an abusive father, and that kind of brought us close together in the very beginning.
And what is it, I'm going to ask Michael this question later on, but what is it you most want the world to know about him?
What a wonderful, giving, caring, generous man he is, and how good he is.
And he's funny, too.
Oh, he's wildly funny.
He can crack some jokes, I tell you.
Yeah, but he's a good man.
Thank you for joining us, too, because I know you didn't want to be on camera.
It was so hard for Michael to trust anyone because everybody always wanted something from him.
Jeannie White Ginder talked with visitors to the Children's Museum about Michael Jackson. She was stunned in the late 80s when the King of Pop contacted her son Ryan. She says Jackson felt sorry for the teen who was shunned after contracting AIDS through a blood transfusion. Ultimately, Ryan White became the national poster child for the disease. In 1990, it was Jackson who accompanied the White family to Ryan's funeral.
There was not a person who knew Ryan that could ever hate him.
But people came to question Jackson after he was charged with child molestation. Mrs. Ginder agreed to testify on Jackson's behalf, but was never called to the stand. Jackson was eventually acquitted.
It hurts when I hear the things that's been said, but I have to go with my heart and what I know from my heart that I believe is true.
Ginder admits, however, she always chaperoned Ryan during his many visits to the Neverland Ranch. Even after Ryan's death, Ginder says she and her family spent several vacations with Jackson.
A couple years ago, he called me and he said him and his mom had been talking, and he said, I just thought I'd call you and tell you Happy Mother's Day. He said, and that people don't know those kind of moments from Michael.
Jackson wrote a poem, song, and produced a video about Ryan called Gone Too Soon. They hold even more special meaning now.
It just showed that he did not ever plan on forgetting Ryan, and now we plan on never forgetting Michael.
Jeannie White Ginder now resides in Florida. She says she's thrilled with the Ryan White exhibit at the museum. It is part of the Power of Children exhibit. As for Jackson, she is hopeful his legacy will be his humanitarianism and his talent.
Michael, in one interview, does say that he thought it was totally appropriate to sleep in a bed. He was a 40-something-year-old man in a bed with a child, which I think is odd, frankly. And if I was going to leave him with my children, I would have a nanny cam on him.
Well, here's the deal. Here's the deal. Let me tell you about Michael, okay? Michael Jackson, from the time he was that big, did nothing but perform.
Right.
No life, no kid life, no nothing. This guy... Sex is not part of his world. This is my opinion. I never believed that sex was part of Michael's world. So to him, hurting a child, he'd rather hurt an adult if he was going to hurt somebody. He would never hurt a child. This is the last person in the world. Because to him, they were the only people that understood him. They were the only people that... So I just wanted to put that out there because, you know, wherever he is, I hope his answer was to not...
Had to have crushed Michael Jackson. I've put myself in his shoes. 5.5 months of your life just being exploited like that, and day after day going into the courtroom, and all these things that would, you know, be said about him. That has to take away your spirit. You know, that has to. I know it took me a long time to recuperate. And it wasn't me up there, you know, so that had to have really taken its toll on him, his health, his whole way of thinking. Michael Jackson did so much for the world, you know, as far as, you know, inspiring them and doing good. I don't understand how people can dislike him. I don't get it. Just because of accusations and false, you know, thoughts of how he is because he has money or because, you know, they think he's weird. So what, you know? We're all weird in our own way.
Michael Jackson did more good for more people around the globe than any entertainer that I can think of recent time.